Welcome to the Asking Why podcast. Our goal is to get to the root issues of systemic problems using a theological and psychological lens. We hope you enjoy. Great conversations don't happen by accident. They're made possible by organizations that believe people deserve hope, healing, and access to resources that change lives. We're grateful for our premier sponsors, Wellness by Dr. Natalia and Uprising Addiction Center. Wellness by Dr. Natalia provides a personalized approach to healthcare through concierge and integrative medicine, helping patients take a proactive approach to their health and well-being. Uprising Addiction Center is committed to helping individuals and families break free from addiction through compassionate, evidence-based care and support. Their team is dedicated to helping people find hope, healing, and a path forward towards lasting recovery. To learn more about our sponsors and the service they provide, click the links below. And now let's get to today's conversation. Welcome to the Asking Why podcast. I'm your host, Clint Davis, and today I have an exciting episode 198, and we're going to talk about marriage. We're going to talk about pre-marriage. We're going to talk about the first year of marriage, but I have Mike.
Novotny.
Say your last name?
Yeah,
there we go. Novotny. Yeah, I didn't want to butcher it. So Mike is a pastor. He's a writer. He's been doing work. He does media work. He does all kinds of awesome things, and he's released this new book called Newlywed. And so they approached me and reached out to talk and have this on. And so I read through some of it, and I thought it was really relevant. I thought the work was really well done, and it's a conversation, we were talking about this before, that's really underserved and that doesn't get a whole lot of airtime. And I don't know about you, but when I was young and single and not married, I felt like that was a group that the church really just didn't tend to, and there wasn't a whole lot of discussion about like these kind of things. So I'm really excited to talk to you and have more of a conversation.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me, Clint. Thanks for making the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me kind of how you got in first. How did you get into writing this book? Where you being a pastor at, and tell people that are listening kind of your background that led to writing this.
Yeah, for sure. The original impetus of the book was pretty selfish and shallow. No, shallow is the wrong word. My wife and I get to go to a lot of weddings, obviously in ministry with church families. And, it was happening like double-digit times where she'd be putting on a beautiful dress. I'm searching for my tie, and I ask her, did we get the couple anything? And, we're Jesus people, so we want to bring as much faith to help them in the first year of marriage. And it was like, I think we just got them we wrote them a check, or we got them some wine glasses or something off the registry. Right. And I was just thinking like, man, I wish there was like a gift that we could give so they could have the best first year of marriage. And so we thought, well, why not? I get to write books. Why not interview a whole bunch of newlyweds, since we've forgotten after 23 years what it's actually like? Like, why not ask them what they thought it was going to be and then what marriage actually turned out to be? And so, wanting to give a good wedding gift present turned into me sitting down couple by couple with 20 totally newlyweds from our church and saying, tell me the gap between expectation and experience. Like, what did you think money was going to be like? What did you think chores and in-laws and communication and sex, and what were the landmines you didn't see coming? What were you well prepared for? And I kind of took the gap between what they thought they were prepared for and what actually happened, and I turned it into the chapters of this book.
That's awesome, man. I find that as a clinician and therapist and counselor that when I get premarital couples or newly married couples or couples after 15 years or 20 years, they spent more time working on and planning for the wedding than the actual marriage. What do you say to that?
I wish you weren't right. But Clint, you are times 100. If you would actually track the hours of how many conversations have we had about the menu or the guest list or the who's standing up in the wedding, and then the day comes and it goes, and it matters. I think we should make a big deal out of that day because it's big in the eyes of God. But if you've done that and to kind of take Jesus out of context, if you have neglected the weightier matters of marriage and you haven't figured out a good plan to talk through disagreements, if you haven't talked through boundaries with in-laws, if you haven't been honest about sexual experiences and what you think it's going to be like, or the chore chat of who's doing what and is it fair or not, man, you can have great appetizers at your wedding, but if you haven't figured that stuff out, I don't think you look back and say, we did it right. We're unhappy overall, but that one day was really great.
One of our biggest fights, we have a picture of it because we got somebody to take a picture afterwards, and I was like, "What?" And this is before social media too. But when we were engaged, and we were living in Pasadena. We went for a walk and got in this huge fight because we had just went to, I think it was Macy's at the time, and in Louisiana we didn't have a Macy's, so we're living in California, and we were doing our registry, And my wife is like scanning these like, $200 kitchen aids and, whatever. And I mean, even for me, it was like even $25 pot holders. And I was like, we can't ask people for this. And she's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, you're scanning like really expensive stuff. And she's like, but that's what that's what you're supposed to do. And I had so much anxiety about asking people to buy me stuff. And I felt like it was so selfish. And I'm like, we don't need people to buy us this stuff. Like, I'd rather it go towards this and that, or, just not ask for it or whatever. And all my like trauma and all my like baggage came up in there. And then she's on the other side being like, dude, like they want to buy us stuff. Like they're going to go to the registry. And if we don't tell them what we want them to buy us, they're going to buy us dumb stuff that we don't want, that we have to return or put up on a shelf somewhere, all that. And we just got in this huge fight about it. And it was just such an interesting, moment of, we were not prepared for this at all, and we're coming from these different perspectives. And I can give, I'm sure you can too, 1,000 different examples. Do you have anything like that for you guys that was kind of shocking? You've been married for 20 years. What is it that, now you kind of go, oh man, that's kind of common, but we don't talk about?
Yeah, I grew up, my dad was a business owner, so he kind of worked long hours. My mom stayed home with me and my brothers. And so my mom would prepare meals and we would enjoy the meals. And then my mom would clean up the meals. And my wife, Kim, grew up in a two-income home where her mom was like a Christian school teacher pumping out 60-hour weeks. So the rule that her parents had was if you made the meal, you don't touch a dish after the meal is done. So here we get like first week of marriage, Kim makes this amazing meal and I just take my dishes and I just set them next to the sink. And she... if looks could murder a husband, I would. She's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I thought I was being a good husband. I was actually
you're like, put him close to the sink. Don't you see how kind I am?"
Yeah. She did not think I was a great husband in that moment, but it reminded me. Actually, I didn't just interview 20 newlyweds. I interviewed 2 Christian counselors who work a lot with marriages, and one of them, Teresa, told me every couple makes 2 mistakes. Number 1, they have expectations they haven't expressed.
Mm-hmm.
And number 2, despite the lack of mutual agreement, they assume those expectations are right.
Yep.
So
true.
You assumed, well, of course we shouldn't ask people to do this. This would be wrong. And I assumed I'm a good husband because I moved the dishes 7 feet from the table to the sink. And I think if there's going to be like a thread that tied all the conversations with the newlyweds I had together, it was that.
You're so right, man. I mean, people, and this is so helpful for people who are married and have been married for a long time, healing situations. I mean, I know I'm still learning things. I mean, even this year, a lot of times I'll just say, I just think we're miscommunicating. I think we're miscommunicating. My wife and I are working. We'll be married 17 years this December. And I'm literally having to go, I think literally you're all what I've thought you were saying by this for 17 years. I'm realizing you're not saying this and you don't mean this truly. And it's like, I have to tell myself, like, what you're saying, I hear this and you're saying that. And I have to give you grace and give you the benefit of the doubt. Now in my brain, with all that I do, there's no way I can compute how what you're saying means what you're saying it means, but I just have to trust you.
Yes,
because either you're a complete psycho and psychopath or you actually communicate differently than me.
How about that? You didn't just marry a more attractive version of you.
That's right. I mean, it's so crazy though, because you're like, man, we're just so different,
Yeah.
For better and worse.
That is so true. Yeah. And then just the nitty gritty of it what are your expectations for holidays and in-laws? Are we doing our own thing? Are we doing those things? Your expectations about sex based on like your wiring and your desires. Like, do we initiate equal amounts or is this kind of my thing or your thing or what's the right amount to have sex? With money? Like if you get a tax return, is your instinct that's free money from Jesus to splurge?
Yeah.
Or is it like, no, this is like college fund 20 years from now. So
that's so true.
By the grace of God, like you're saying, you can learn things in year 23 or 17, but man, if there was a rewind button on life or a control Z, I wish I could go back and have those conversations earlier because it would have made marriage a lot better.
Yeah. And normalizing it too for people that, you don't know there's a right catch up. You know what I mean? Like you don't know that there's like a right thing to do until you get in it. And the other person's like, how are you the way that you are? You know what I mean? Like how have you lived? My wife would say this, how have you lived your whole life and functioned and acted like this, You just have to go, oh my gosh. I'm like, how can you be like this? Like,
Yes.
and somehow neither, no, sometimes it's wrong, but more times than not, it's just different.
Yes.
And, the beauty of, marriage is it sharpens us, and it really, for me, and made me recognize, especially in the last few years, just how selfish I am, just how egotistical and how much I want attunement. I want someone to meet my needs without asking for them to meet those needs. And I want them to know about those needs without me having to express them. And I want them to meet those needs. And that's love.
Wow.
And it's like, man, only Christ can do that. And, it's helped me to recognize, like, and to repent really of, like, man, I think I'm a great husband. As a therapist, I'm sure you the same way as a pastor working with people and writing about these things, you're measuring and going, okay, in comparison, I'm doing pretty good. And it's like, but then when you compare yourself to Jesus and the way he treats his church and his bride, woof,
man,
light years away.
Literally tomorrow I'm preaching on Ephesians 5, and
nice.
It is so life-giving, such a perfect blueprint, and it's so humbling to think, man, just the humility of Christ and what he calls us to in marriage, for me as a husband to take responsibility and ownership and, lead the way to healthy fruitfulness, instead of being like Adam in Genesis 3 and being passive because it's complicated. That's so crazy to me, just looking back at that chapter. The woman said to the serpent said to the woman and the serpent, the woman, the serpent, the serpent, the woman, and then like almost like a parenthetical remark, and she gave some of the fruit to her husband who was with her.
Right.
And I think, whoa, back up. I need to read it. Like, he was there the whole time. And that's just such a rebuke and a call to action that I think guys, man, especially marriage is complicated. And like you were saying, you marry someone who's not you, that the complications push a lot of men into passivity. And I think the wives I meet at church who just feel like it's all on their shoulders, and the mental load, which affects their sexual connection and drive, the amount of respect they have for their husband. They just feel like I'm going to be the one who has to be the captain to get the results. And I think a lot of what I do for myself and a lot of the husbands I meet is just to step into that noble, high and humbling calling to like be the first one to ask, are you happy? If I wanted to make our marriage 5% better in the next 90 days, what would I do differently? What would I do more of? What would I do less of? And just to have the Christ-like humility to hear that without overreacting and then to pursue it. Too many guys, I think, are running to their phones, to softball leagues, to golf, to the bar, to the garage, when there's a much greater happiness. It's a much narrower road, but like the holiness and humility of matrimony is the way to get it. I want to call myself and others to it.
Yeah, man, it's beautiful. I mean, that's where you find Christ. And we talk about this in church. You hear this your whole life. You need Jesus, you need Jesus, you need Jesus. And the reality is as a husband, you find him in sacrificing and dying to self in your marriage. I was meeting my pastor yesterday, and he was asking me some things. And he was asking me, I did another podcast on somebody else's podcast, and we were just talking about the sovereignty of God. And he's like, man, I just feel like, you've grown in the last 3 years in the way in which you talk about these things. Why is that? And I said, well, through suffering, through learning to die to myself in ways that are just a gift from God and not my own choice. The Holy Spirit is the one doing that work. And if it was up to Clint, I would not sacrifice. I would not serve. And in seeing the ways in which my wife sacrifices and serves, and seeing her look like Christ and those things coming together, it's just a beautiful thing, but it's really painful and it's really difficult. And people think, oh, you're a pastor, you're a therapist, all these things, it must be easy. And it's like, it's not. And in some ways it's even more difficult because and because you're aware and because you have that expectation on yourself and other people to do the work. But you're right. I think the problem with men, let me take a right turn. The problem with men specifically in our country and in our churches is we don't have a model for it. So we didn't see other men doing healthy, emotionally connected things. We can give a bunch of reasons to that: war, poverty, culture, they didn't learn. Like, those are all explanations, right? We can explain it. But the reality is if you don't see it, it's very rare that you know how to do it. And you might have a temperament for it or a personality for it, and by God's grace are able to do it without seeing it. But for a lot of men, like we function really well as boys to men by being modeled and discipled and taught how to do it. And if you ask men all the time, it's like, who do you know in your life who's a good husband, or who do you know that you'd want to love your wife like, or have a good sex life like, or, it's like, I mean, I have no clue, like nobody is usually the answer. And if not, it's like one person that's, twice removed. Is that your experience?
1,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like you have the blueprints in the Bible, but just lived examples of like, oh, he's the guy I want to follow in his footsteps, or he's going to get me from A to B. It feels super rare.
Yeah, and it's difficult because, of course, it's in Scripture, but while we're reading Scripture, Jesus is saying, and go and do these things so other people can see me in you, so they can see me. Like Jesus in first, John, it's like he is the Word. Everything comes through him and to him and by him and for him and all these things. And in the beginning was him, and in the end is going to be him. And yet he came to show us what God was like. And then he gave us the Holy Spirit to show the world who Christ is, so that we can be little Christ. And so, we need to see that in each other's lives. So, I mean, men like you really encourage me in your writing and your teaching and what you're doing, because it just is such a breath of fresh air to remind me there are other men doing it. And traditionally, not to just beat up on men, but traditionally, that's the problem, is that it's not that men stink at being men, it's that no one, showed them how to do it. And
I'm so grateful. You mentioned the friends that you get together with regularly. We literally call our group of friends the supper club. So my ears opened up wide to that phrase. And every month we get together. There's 4 or 5 couples. And after having good food and catching up on life, we always have a question that we ask. We say, on the count of 3, husband and wife couple, give a letter grade to your marriage. And no, you don't know normally what's coming out of your spouse's mouth. But in front of this like safe, Jesus-loving environment that's going to encourage and forgive and spur each other on, 1, 2, 3, and, and then the B- comes out, or the C+, and we get to talk about it. And to your point, there's other people in the room who've been there, who've failed, or who've succeeded, who can normalize the experience, who can guide us through it. And I've just been so grateful for that. It's not just me and Kim with the Bible hoping it's going to work out. But you got people that can, sharpen you up or pick you up off the ground when you just feel like you stink at being a good spouse.
Yeah,
that community is priceless.
You mentioned, it's funny, I did a clip the other day on like the 4 things or 5 things you should deal with, in marriage, and you named all of them, and you named them really well in the book, and people name them, the couples and the individuals say, like, these are the things we wish we would have done. You talked about expectations with sexuality. Can you talk about that a little bit? What has been the biggest takeaway from the book, and in your own life, if you had like a couple sentences to go, hey, I want people to know this, newly married people, but also people who are in marriage, what would be, the application there as a pastor, as a, husband?
What have I learned about sex and marriage is the question.
Sure, yeah.
How long is this podcast, Clint?
That's right, 10 hours.
10 hours. I'm going to need a couple more.
I know.
The candid truth is, Kim and I both came into marriage loving each other, loving Jesus, from pretty healthy family backgrounds, and we had struggled so much. 7 years in, we're in a sex therapist's office trying to figure out why we're having the same exact fight every 90 days, and why we kind of press it down, and then 3 months later it's bubbled up again, and we're saying the same things that we did 3 months ago. I really wish I could go back and tell a younger Mike, what you saw on all those sinful glimpses of pornography is so skewed, and here's why: it makes sex seem 100 times easier than it actually is. I honestly think it wasn't like the perversion of what I saw. So I was addicted to pornography for about a decade. There was certainly that. Thankfully, I'm forgiven by Jesus, but I think the lingering secret that I never caught was that it convinced me that if 2 people love each other, sex should be fiery and simple. And then I actually got married, and I didn't marry a similar sexual version of myself. I married an individual
surprise,
who has different desires and preferences. And I think what happened is I got really impatient. So when things weren't moving as fast and as passionate as I thought, I would say really dumb things like literally in the middle of the moment, "Are you okay?" Which I now know does not inspire a woman to let
Feel
go and
okay.
enjoy herself sexually. It increases the pressure and the tension. So yeah, we just kind of spiraled with me being impatient. She feels pressured, and just sex wasn't this thing that we wanted it to be. So I really had to learn. I think of categories like spontaneous and responsive desire that a lot of counselors talk about. That it's not that one of you likes sex more; it's that you like it at different times. I like it before it happens. Kim ends up really liking it as it's happening.
It's a
But
very traditional male-female response.
for sure. But in my brain, I'm like, okay, I can only initiate so many times before you got to return the favor. My expectation of like, if you loved me like I loved you,
That's right.
like this wouldn't be a 9-to-1 ratio. This would be, I can do maybe 7 out of 10, but like,
Yeah,
I used to play
give
dumb
me
games
something.
with like, okay, I'm not going to initiate and we're going to see how long she goes without.
Dude, I've done that so many times. It's such a baffling, stupid, non-fruitful situation. I actually had a therapist recommend that one time, and I did it, and it was a train wreck.
Yeah, and me too. It just made me like bitter and mad, and like she was fine. She didn't even know the quiet experiment I was conducting. So, I
I'm sure it
think
wasn't as quiet as you thought it was.
it just took me way too long to just sit down and figure out what are good expectations. How much do we expect to be together? Knowing what we know about each other and how we work. Like she can't expect me to be someone I'm not, and I can't expect. So for us, and Kim has given me permission to share all this. She is like the most organized, amazingly productive woman. And if something is not on my wife's calendar, like her headspace is just not there. And so I kind of thought, oh, we'll do a Friday date night. And, it's kind of, hopefully it works physically for us, but then we're going to be spontaneous some other time during the week. That sounds about right, twice a week. But the spontaneous part just never worked out. And I'd initiate and the timing was off and she wasn't ready and didn't respond the same way. So it took us literally like 15 years to say, what if we just like scheduled it twice? What if we weren't waiting to be like whimsical and passionate in the moments? And man, that for us at least, that little thing of like, this kind of fits into who we are.
Man, I love this. I already hear people cringing and people who are not married thinking, you have to schedule it. Like, I've heard so many people say that and walk friends through, when I've given them that literal exact advice. And then they're like, I just don't want to do that. Like, that's going to take all the love out of it. And that's going to take, and then like 3 years later, they're like, oh yeah, I get it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And for us, I mean, if someone's listening and they think that sounds very unsexy, for me, it probably wouldn't be that way because I'm more spontaneous in my desire. But, for Kim to get to the spot where it's mutually enjoyable, to have it sprung on her sometime during the week that she can't prepare.
So much pressure.
Better for her pleasure, better for my pleasure, better for us together. If it's like, oh yeah, I can mentally prepare myself and lead up to this moment so that it turns out so much better for us. And I just like, wow, I don't consider myself that dumb, but
that's right.
15 years, I've like 100 books on like marriage and sex on my bookshelf. And, and the simple thing of like, who are we and what works for us?
Yeah.
Feels like an experiment we could have figured out 10 years ago.
That's so good. I mean, it's a good point to say, and even though you and I have both written books, it's like you can read the book and get the information, but it's again, the practice and the communication that is so key to implementing what we're talking about. We can read the Bible, but if we don't go and do it, and every couple is different. So you can read the books and it's like, this is the joy of community. It's the joy of marriage is we get to talk to each other and go, okay, where are you at? Where am I at? Where do we get these things? And I would say that, most people's problem when they get into marriage is they don't know how to communicate their emotions and feelings. Their emotions and feelings have been hidden and sequestered away for, 18 years, and now all of a sudden they're supposed to have these big, lofty conversations that for them are kind of life and death. And that begins the trickle of the problem.
It's beautifully said. Yeah, maybe most people know this, but maybe a few are listening who grew up in interesting biblical environments. A couple years ago, I did a study on every time the word sex or sexual appears in the Bible. In the New International Version, it's 77 times.
Mm-hmm.
Clint, did you know that all 77 of those times have something in common? Is that they're warnings about sexual sin?
Yeah.
So
the sex and money, man.
Yeah.
The two
So
biggest things.
I think a lot of people grow up in Christian environments or homes or churches where, because we take the Bible seriously and God's sexual boundaries, it's like, no, no, don't wait. And while that's good, if it's not balanced with where the Bible begins, that a good God invented sex, that they were naked and not ashamed, that sex was in the world before sin was in the world, that the Song of Songs isn't like a satanic intrusion into the Old Testament canon, like the Spirit inspired this kind of spicy, like, until you start with this foundation that sex is a good thing and God's good children can talk about it without blushing or being embarrassed. I mean, God started the conversation. And so I sometimes tell Christians, like, listen, if God is talking about it, you can continue the dialogue. And you don't have to be embarrassed to say to your spouse, what do you like about our sex life? What are your best like memories of us together? What are you curious about? What are you pretty uncomfortable with? Like, what are we doing that you really enjoy? What are we doing that's kind of like, you put up with? And if those conversations aren't happening, at least on an annual basis, no wonder we get stuck. No wonder we get in ruts. No wonder you're kind of like devolving into roommates, or you're just in this like pattern that's not really super enjoyable for either of you. So if you feel like you can't, because maybe you grew up in a don't, wait, warning, danger kind of conversation, I think you need to like rebalance like a car, like balance it biblically. The warnings are true, but the promises in the original blueprint is true too.
That's so good. I would say the second thing to that, just to add on, is the idolatry of sex, right? So on one side, yes, we undermine it by seeing how amazing and incredible and necessary it is, due to our trauma and our past and all the things you just said. And the other side is not taking the time to do the work to get to a healthy place of sexuality because we just want it right now. And whichever one of the couples is the one who thinks that sex is going to be the thing that brings them that attunement and that connection, and it'll solve all the problems, they're longing for it the most. So if the one spouse is like, well, I just want cuddles and love and affection, and yeah, I'll take the sex, but I want those things, and if I can just get those things, I'll be happy and satisfied. Or the other one who's like, well, those are all great things, but I want to have sex, and including orgasm, and I want it to go a certain way, and if we could just do that a certain number of times, everything will be fine. Well, then that's the goal. That's the idol that's placed there, and that's the main thing I'm trying to do. And so if I don't have that, then everything's not okay. And so taking some time at 90 days, 6 months, 5 years to work on getting healthier and having longer conversations and going to counseling and praying and fasting, like that, God might give you that thing that you want, but it's the closeness to Christ and the sanctification and the sacrifice and the things that along the way you get that are actually the thing that you should be striving for.
Yeah.
And man, I have learned that lesson over and over repeatedly in marriage, with parenting, that it's, if I truly am honest, like I want intimacy with my wife more than I want Christ. And on the journey to get that, God is so gracious and kind that he gives me himself. And then that is more important and better than the thing that I was actually striving.
Wow. That is beautifully said. Yeah.
Well, it's painful to figure out that, no pat on my back, in spite of all my action the opposite direction, like you, whether it's pornography or lust or, whatever, anger, frustration with it, you got two broken people coming together trying to figure this out with a blueprint, but without any guides. And I think what you're doing in your book and what I'm trying to do, is trying to give people guides. And so I love it, man. I really like the stoplight method. So can you talk about, we could go into money and finances and, spend all day. But can you talk about the stoplight method and how it can help people in these moments where, they need to talk to one another, but maybe it doesn't go well?
Yeah. So I'm sitting at the back corner table at our local coffee shop with the newest newlyweds from our church family, super young. One of them might have been like a 19-year-old, so fresh-faced, and they're frustrated. And the guy is more of the talkative one. He's like, Pastor, I love my wife. There's times I come home and I can just tell it's not right. And I ask her, what's the matter? And she says nothing. And I know she's lying to me. So I say, no, really, what's the matter? And she said, no, it's fine. And he asks like 5 times in a row until she gets mad and yells back. And he just looks at me like, what am I supposed to do right now in this situation? I love her. I want to make her problems better. And that's where I thought of this stoplight method, which is there are some times when your spouse is not fine and it's a red light moment, which means I'm not fine. I don't want to talk about it. I need a break. I need some space. It'll be better in the morning. I'm not in the right head spot. And what I don't need is for you to push, pressure, pressure.
I already love this, and I've never heard of it, which is great. I love new stuff. Go ahead. I'm going to use it.
The green light is where, no, it's not fine, and I need your help to fix it. I don't know what to do. I need your advice. What did I do wrong? Why am I so frustrated with this coworker at work? Like, green light, you listen to me. I'm all ears. The yellow lights, oh man, this is rough for a guy like me, is I want you to listen to me, but what I don't want is another thing on my list that I've either done wrong or need to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
So what I need right now is like,
we're kindred
passion.
spirits, man.
Tell me it was hard. Give me your empathy. But Clint, what I've learned is that most dudes, like when they're actually driving their car, do you know what they do when they get to a yellow light?
They punch it.
They act like it's a green light. It's make this the fastest green light. And too many.
They don't slam their brakes on. That's for sure.
They do not. It's not a yield moment for them to check and proceed with caution. It's get at it. So
that's so good.
What I've seen is because you don't know where your spouse is at with any given problem. That's like a conversational hack to just say, "Hey, I love you. Is this a red light, yellow light, or green light moment?"
That's great.
Do you need space? Do you need just a listening ear? Or do you need advice? And that can really help you be a great spouse instead of like rushing with a solution when that's actually going to backfire on you in the end.
So good. Yeah, I always say, is it a fixing problem or a listening problem? But I like your version as well. It gives me a third option because I always get it wrong. If I try to initiate, but this goes back to like such an important part of marriage is the humility to go, I need to ask what you need versus trying to give you what I need. So then I win and get the affirmation and get what I need, which is actually selfish. So like, I'm going to walk in, you're sad, you're mad that Becky did XYZ. Sorry if your name's Becky. We don't have a Becky in our life. So Becky did XYZ. And I go, well, just call Becky and tell her and she's like, what? Shut up. Like I'm just telling you about this. I'm frustrated. I don't need your advice. And I'm like, well, I thought you were telling me it's a simple solution. Why don't you just call Becky? Like it'll solve the whole problem, right? Or I come in and she's like, Becky, da 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 da, and and I'm just listening and nodding and thinking about 12 other things, and then she's like, right, and I'm like, and she's like, did you hear what I said? And I'm like, yeah, I mean that sucks, and she's like, well, what should I do? And then I'm like, oh man, can you go back to the first part because I wasn't really listening to the details of what you were saying, and it's like. When I guess, she's always wanting the other thing. So it's just so much easier for me to go, hey, all right, 2 sentences in, are you looking for my feedback on this, my support? Like, what do you need? What do you want? So I love that because that gives me even a more clear, like to communicate to her, is this, are you really fine? And, you're not, I know what fine means, effed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. That's my least favorite. My wife's least favorite word is sure. And mine is, I'm fine. Well, hey, do you want this salad? Sure. She's like, I'm going to kill you. Like, I do not want you to say sure.
The 4-letter word.
Yeah. And mine is, fine just means this is a dumpster fire. And I'm not sure if I can touch it yet or get in this. So I'm going to definitely use the stoplight method for fine responses because that's great.
Yeah, and you can set your spouse up for success if you lead with that.
Oh yeah, man.
If you come home and say, "Hey, can we have a yellow light conversation?" If they know what that means, then they're prepared from the jump to listen in the best way that they can.
That's great. All right, let's jump to social media. So this is another huge one that I don't see on a lot of lists, and we all acknowledge as a dumpster fire, but we're not really talking about. So let's see my options because it's just off the top of my head. Should you not have any social media at all? Should you have accounts where you both have access to the other person's account, or should you be like some couples and have a joint account where you share everything as blank and blank, Smith? What's your take?
You're forcing.
I know there's not a direct right answer, but I want to hear I just want to hear the raw, raw Pastor Mike answer.
As a guy who makes social media, maybe our team's going to be mad at me for this. I don't know that I've met many couples that say our relationship is struggling because we don't use social media.
Amen.
I can think of a lot of couples who would say the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for the average person in America, where we need to push ourselves is much less screen time, much more in the flesh, kind of incarnational time.
So good.
I think my pastor, when I was like so back in the 1900s, when I was in middle school, my pastor told this story that there was once a boy kind of walking from his house to school, and there was this like big property on the corner, and the sidewalk took this like really long journey around, and it was so tempting because just cutting across this neighbor's yard would have just made it so much easier to get to school. But the problem was the neighbor had this really nasty dog that it kept on a chain, and the boy just, he's walking around on Monday, walking around on Tuesday, Thursday. He finally gets to Friday. He's like, you know what? I'm just tired. And he thought, here's the shortcut that you can get to. And you guys saw the story ends. He gets bit. I think a lot of us are looking for wisdom, connection, and advice. And the long road is like what you and I were talking about earlier. It's getting together in a room, in the flesh, making time in our schedules, not asynchronous, like you and me, reading your reactions, sharpening each other to have a great marriage. And I think what most people are doing out of convenience is they're replacing that with a scroll where you see an edited, filtered, just what I want you to see glimpse of a relationship that actually makes you feel like you're probably worse than you actually are. It might make
it's definitely going to make you feel worse than you actually are. Nobody's posting their actual reality.
For sure. It makes you more critical of your spouse, makes you a little bit bitter. So not always. I hope the content that you and I are creating doesn't do that to people. But you and I are sharing the stories we want to, and the audience can't ask us back, hey, tell us more about that thing with pornography. They can't push like a good friend would. So I think there's a place for it. I don't think you have to toss your screens in a dumpster, but I just find myself constantly pushing everyone in my life to like set good boundaries, to be rigid in reinforcing them, and to invest more face-to-face time with those you love.
That's great. I don't know if I should even say this. I'll just say it. My least favorite thing that I see sometimes, and I love all of you. Okay. I love you. But when you give your wife when people post about their wife, and it's anniversary or it's birthday or it's anything really, and they do this long thing, my instinct is to be like, have you walked over in the room and actually told them that? And it's not that those things are bad and wrong. It's just in my line of work and in my community and in my experience with traveling, and it's, that's not a small, portion of humans. That's the harder thing to do. And posting it online is nice, but man, if you don't say it in person, it's so devastating. And then the opposite side of that is I've worked with plenty of couples who, don't post something online, and the fight is about the spouse going, it's our anniversary and you didn't post things online, and the guy or the girl's like, I wrote you a letter and we went on a date. Like, I don't understand why I need to, so it's like both sides of that are so, toxic, I think, and unhelpful, and really point towards what are we looking for in these posts, in the social media. Is it really about a relationship or is it about our own ego? And yeah, I'm with you, man. The less of that stuff you can do, the more. And I'm with you. I mean, obviously we have Clint Davis Counseling. We're doing a podcast. Like, I don't think social media in and of itself is bad. I wish people put great information and positive teachings and real life things that were helpful out there. And people are, thank God. But I mean, by and large, it's really, really toxic and really unhealthy. And nobody's asking themselves, why am I posting this? Is this necessary? Is this godly? Is this encouraging? My son, I got to baptize my youngest son, not this Easter, but last Easter. And I don't post personal things on social media, just jujitsu and counseling and Jesus. And man, I wanted to post it so bad.
Wait, pause. Can you say that trio again?
Yeah, jujitsu, counseling, and Jesus. Those are the things that I will post about.
If I had $1 for every podcast host that told me that. Okay, back to the baptism.
Sure, it's not that many. But yeah, like I'll talk about those things because they're the things I do. I'm encouraged by. I think they're helpful, and it's not really about me. It's about the community and the thing that we're doing more than it is what Clint's doing. So I don't mind posting those things. But I think it's been, 7 or 8 years now. So maybe I have to go back and look. But I had this, I didn't post about anything for Lent. And I just had this whole experience, which I've talked about on here before, where I recognize how much dopamine and how much self and ego and posting videos of my kids and them being cute and what they're doing. But the bias lens was, oh, I'm doing this to show people what good Christianity looks like, or I'm doing this to, show people and be encouraged by good parenting or by a loving family. And I want to put good things in the world. But the amount of times of going back and looking and commenting and thinking and taking the affirmation and people projecting and all that stuff, it really was way more cons than it was pros. So I just made a decision I'm not going to do that anymore. And I'm going to text the people in my life who I love cute pictures of my kids and send them the videos. And if I wouldn't text them, then they don't need to see it. But I baptized my youngest a couple years ago on Easter. And man, there was this instinct of like, these pictures are so cute. Like, this is such an amazing moment. I want to celebrate it. And I had to just hold fast and go, no, I'm not going to do that for me. Now, other people, I'm not hating on if they choose to do it. But for me, maybe my ego is just too fragile. But I just recognized like it just wasn't good for me and my wife. And most of my friends, our closest friends, have gotten off social media, don't have social media within our circle. And if they do, they have like a fake account so they can check Marketplace and get like cheap tables. I mean, that's about as much social media. So I have to like text them all the stuff I'm doing in the podcast because they have no clue ever what is going on in my like professional life. And so we have like a family group text with our friends, and I have to send like, and I never do because I never think of it, but I love that that's our culture. I love that I have to fight to remember to take my phone out to video my kids because I'm trying to be present in the moment. And we'll get done with stuff, and my wife is like, did we take a picture of that? Like, golly, like that was so dumb. We need it. But we just have gotten in the practice of that's not really what we're thinking about.
Wow.
But that took a lot of work, and that was not my instinct. Mm-hmm. So I'm with you, man. I think the less, the better.
Yeah. Thank you. That's such a great balance. I think it was Martin Luther 500 years ago who said, wherever Jesus builds a church, the devil builds a chapel next door.
Oh, yeah.
And so that, like, every time there's a great tool that can do so much good, the devil's not just going to sit back and say, oh, darn it, I lost. He's going to meddle with it. So I love the kind of balance here. I've been so blessed by good podcasts, digital resources, staying in touch with people I care about. So it's easy just to swing the pendulum from side to side. And I love how you're kind of landing us right in the middle.
Yeah, it's hard though, man. I mean, even a couple weekends ago, my wife, I have no social media on my phone. I get onto it through my laptop. I have Ever Accountable on all my stuff. So, for my family, our iPad, we have one iPad now that I use for like sermons, and my kids don't use it, but I put, got to have Ever Accountable on that in case, they need something and they want to look something up and I'm not available. And so anyway, we have all these, mechanisms to keep it, but it's such a work to keep up with it and to make sure everything's safe and that I'm safe and that they're safe and that she's safe. And someone, I didn't realize because I don't check it, my practice checks my Facebook Messenger, but somebody had reached out. I can't remember if they text my wife. Maybe it was like an old friend. Hey, I'm messaging Clint on Facebook and I have a crisis and blah, blah, blah. I don't have his number. And so she comes out of the garage and I'm working out and she's like, hey, this situation's happening. And so it's just, anyway, I handled it. But the access that people have to you too ends up causing a fight, because my wife's like, well, do you have Facebook Messenger on your phone? And I was like, I don't even know. Like, I don't have social media on my phone, but I didn't remember that there was a Facebook Messenger app because I don't check it. And I don't get updates on my phone what's it called? Notifications. Yeah, because I turned all that off. So I was like, oh, I do still have it. And she was like, okay, well, I was like, I'll delete it. I don't need it on there. I don't check it. And so we just had to have that conversation of like, what, here's another area where you just got to keep cutting people's access who don't need access to you so that you're not like caring for people that are not even secondary, but like tertiary to the primary people in your life that you need to be investing and spending time with. But it's just work, man. It's not, you got to have the humility to go, I didn't see that and I'm sorry. And that, I know that can bring up anxiety, but you have access to it. So you can look at it and see what's on there and see that I haven't responded to a thing in 8 years, but it's like, well, that's beside the point. Kill the access. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. I love that.
Or in the past, I'd have gotten really mad and been like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm not even messaging anybody and you're just freaking out. And now I know better to go, oh yeah, I see that there is a risk. And so if there's any risk, I want there to be no risk. And so let's, kind cut this out. Even if it's not about inappropriateness, even it's just about access. It's about, hey, it's Saturday and you're answering a crisis call when you don't have to.
Yeah, maybe a good question for your partner would be, how do you feel about my relationship with screens?
That's right.
So, is it bothering you? Is it annoying you? Do you feel neglected? Ooh. And man, if you get any feedback there, I think at the end of the day, you probably want your spouse to like you more than this random community of people who probably don't know your middle name. So
if only, right, Pastor Mike? I mean, if only that was people's heart posture, is they cared more about what the people closest to them thought than the people out there. But it puts it to the test. You're right. That's a great question, is just ask your spouse today, like, hey, is any way I'm handling my phone and my screens, like separating us or bringing us closer together, or what? I don't think people like the answer, but I hope the goal is, bad answers with good solutions.
Those who humble themselves will be exalted. My Lord and Savior once said.
That's right. What else? What other major points you want to cover, man? That I know we've just been rambling, but it's been good.
Yeah, no, I've loved it. This is not in the Bible, so this is just my experience thing. But Kim and I have been so blessed by setting and protecting a date night. So we had a kind of a marriage Bible study early in our marriage where it was really a high bar. The pastor was saying, if you can talk every day, if you can date every week, if you can get out of town like for an overnight every quarter, and if you can vacation every year, he said, I almost guarantee you're going to be in a really great spot in your marriage. And that's been a high bar for us. We haven't been able to do all those things in our 23 years, but man, publicly saying to friends and family, like Friday night is our night. And, Mom, if you're in the hospital dying, we can probably reschedule or schedule dinner later. But our church family knows, like, unless something's really going off the rails, like that's Mike and Kim time. And what we've just seen is that even if we have busy weeks, my wife works, I work, we got 2 kids. Even if we feel like we're 2 ships passing in the night, if at least every 7 days, there's like quantity time to reconnect as friends and partners and lovers, that it's really hard for us to get too far off the track of feeling distant from each other. So I said before, Kim and I are super like organized, schedule, box checking people. So that works for us. But I keep pushing myself to like, what's the most number of dates I can have in a year?
That's great.
And, this year we're trying to get 75 dates in 1 year. So even if they're short, working out, grabbing a coffee, just like me and you, no kids, no phone time, just investing in this great gift that God has given to us. And that's been such a blessing to us through all the years of marriage.
That's great, man. Yeah, I love, I can tell you counsel a lot of people and write about this and are real because you know the dynamic of, hey, this is what works for us, but it might not work for everybody else. Because that, there are some standard things though that like you're saying are generally helpful. And then, you gotta adjust them depending on, do we have sick kids? Do we have special needs? Do we have financial issues? But I would encourage, that even if you can't go on a date, going for a walk, going and sitting on the back porch, getting up in the morning and having some coffee, actually talking, and saying, hey, what's up? How you feeling? What's going on with you? I haven't done it in a little bit, but I need to get back on it. But I try to be intentional with telling my wife and my boys, I have 2 boys, what I love about them in this season. So I try to do it, at least once a quarter. I got to think about when the last time it is. So this will encourage me to do it tonight. I tend to do it with my kids easier because we're in the bed and I'm laying down reading them a book and ending the night, and that's kind of how we do it. But just saying things like, hey, I really love you, to my wife. It's like, I really love you right now because of how hard you're fighting for our kids to do this, or I really love you. And not in the conditional way of I love you because of these things. I just love about you, and I see you and I see what you're doing in these areas. I think that's invaluable and so important.
So good.
And even if you don't go on a date, at least do that, at least help those people. And then ask, like, what do you see in me that you see Christ is doing? And then on the opposite side, I tend to ask my wife too much probably because I can lean towards like codependency. I'm like, what is something I need to be working on? Like, what am I doing? Am I like, what's annoying? Because I'll miss it. I think I'm cleaning the sink after I shave, but am I cleaning it enough? Like whatever the thing is. And genuinely be okay with, no, you missed the whole left side, whatever the thing is. I'm like, but my energy and effort was there. And it's like, and that matters to her now, where 15 years ago, it didn't matter as much if it wasn't done.
I wasn't distracted when you were talking. I was literally writing on the bottom of my note sheet for interviews. what I love about you in this season. That is a really brilliant, specific way to help see your spouse.
It's empowering, man, and some of our personalities obviously are more wired to that. So in that, what I would say is, if your spouse is not very good at that, please don't look at me as a good husband. Just that's my temperament, so it's easy for me to do that. And other things are hard, where that might not be your spouse. My wife not super like note writing. So it's like, I have to go, oh, well, just because I'm good at this is not because I'm such an amazing husband. God has wired me and gifted me with this, and this is what I give my wife. What can I accept from her is the same thing. And meeting in the middle on that, I think, is one of the toughest things about marriage is, and I was going to go love languages. I like the love languages, but they can also be very dangerous. So I was going to hesitate. Because a lot of times people come in and go, he's not loving me with my love language, and so I can't be loved by him. And that can be a very dangerous place of like, well, really, you just won't accept any other ways of their loving you, and you have this one thing that you have to have, or you're not, you don't believe it or something. So thoughts on that?
The practicality of what you talked about of going for a walk, I've learned, especially in this last season, is so huge. Especially if you have little kids, busy family, you feel like, oh, we got to get a babysitter and it's expensive and dinner. And so you kind of put yourself in this date box of reconnecting that the bar is so high, you can't get to it very often.
And how old are your girls?
They're 18 and 16 now.
Right. So yeah, I'm not there yet, but and I want you to talk to this because my pastor talks to me about it all the time. One of my elders is that they've reached the kids can stay at home stage and we're just now, we just took a walk the other night and left the kids at the house for the first time. And I was like, oh man, this is awesome. But also, are they going to burn the house down and kill themselves by the time we get back?
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird. Just what walking does. So leave devices at home. It's like we're together. I can't multitask as I'm doing chores while you're talking to me. We don't get distracted by screens. So it's just an environment where there's something about it, and you just get time to talk through all those things. So I've even heard parents with little kids, they're not going to die if you go around the block.
Yeah.
So why don't you do an experiment?
Depends on the kid.
Well, I have daughters. Maybe if you have sons, you're like,
I was about to say, you're such a girl dad right now, bro. The fact that you said that, Pastor Mike, is the girl daddest comment of all time.
I love it. We got Cain and Abel raising in our house, and they're not going to.
Dude, last night we were at dinner. This is another parenting funny. It's that's the other thing is couples are not the same because you don't have the same kids as other people. And so what you can and can't do. What were we talking about last night? Oh, one of our friends, their daughter is on Minecraft, and our kids, they've created these worlds. And so she came during the week. We don't do screen times when school starts. So she came last night, and we were at our supper club, and she's like, Uncle Clint, she's like, can I show Grady and Jude this level of Minecraft? I've made it. It's incredible. And I was like, okay, look, you can show them for 5 minutes because I'm really proud of what you've made. So she leaves, and her mom's like, it's awesome. There's a house that's made that's a unicorn, and you can go in the unicorn, and there's different levels, and there's a slide that goes down there, and there's a garden, and she's got a cross, and all these things. And me and my wife just started dying laughing. And I was like, my kids literally build a tower and drop goats off that poop coming out with TNT, and they see how many they can blow up on the way down. Those.
Promise me, if you have a hook for the start of this interview, this is going to be the clip that you take.
Yeah, that's right, man. I mean, it's crazy the difference in girls and boys, man. We'd get invited to these strawberry chocolate, be Christmas, and people would go, come over and, we're going to dip chocolate. We're going to have our kids dip, strawberries in chocolate and then freeze it and eat it. And I'm like, no, my kids are going to have chocolate from here to Jerusalem.
Yeah, you read the story of Joseph's brothers selling him into slavery. I can see why that would happen.
And my elder, Weston, he has 5 girls, so he always says stuff, and I'm like, I'm not gonna get away with I get it, and you can push me this direction, but with boys, I'm like, bro, you think you can leave them at home?
My main point: take a walk if you can, when you can.
No, that's great, bro. That's so good. No, you're 100% right. I mean, that's so incredible, and you need to. I think we can do more than we think. I think that's the other side of living in this really comfortable life of, we're scared of the wrong things, and we're not scared of the right things. We are scared to take a walk, and take care of ourselves, or go on a date night, or do something for our marriage because of our kids' emotions or their feelings, or that we're terrified they're going to feel abandoned or blow the house up or whatever. And we can do a lot more of that than we give ourselves credit for. And then on the opposite side, here we are sending them into things and giving them things that they're not prepared for at all, and not being scared enough about, screens and sleepovers and, all the things. So I think it's a important point and a fine balance. So to talk to newlyweds, to wrap that up, especially for the book, we talked about marriage all over the place, but for newlyweds, what do you feel like that first year, if they're struggling and they're feeling like maybe I made a mistake and maybe I've messed up? Because I think this tends to be, a pretty big feeling that people have, even on their honeymoon or even halfway in. What's some advice you would give them to encourage them?
Yeah, I used to do premarital counseling at our church, and we do lessons on communication and on spiritual habits. There was one part, though, that it was a little bit of homework that I would give every couple. And Clint, I think 100% of the couples I took through premarital counseling said this was our favorite part of what we did. And the homework was take a married couple that you respect out to dinner and ask them everything you've ever wanted to know about marriage. And I think what happens, kind of an answer to your question, is you find out that you are so normal that you are not the first husband to feel this way. You're not the first wife that thinks, what did I just do when I said I do? And, just like normalizing, like couples that love Jesus still struggle with sexual intimacy, or they get in the same fight over leftovers and who's cleaning up the dishes. So just knowing that the people you respect, who are like where you want to be, they were where you now are. It just helps you from panicking and thinking, oh, this is all wrong. And like, nope, we're on a good path. We got stuff to work on and ways to go. But I'm just, going back to your social media comments, it just normalizes like what a real marriage actually looks like.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah. So having those mentors, those guides, and it doesn't take like a 3-year commitment. Sometimes it's just one dinner to tell us about
so
money
good.
in your marriage. And man, the stories come out, and then you're like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Yeah. Speaking of money, since you said that, is there any, just off the top financial advice that you would give? People ask me about joint accounts, separate accounts, all those kind of things, but is there something that you would say, hey, these are a couple of red flags around finances that I would,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. If the premise of the book is mutually agreed upon expectations are everything, a budget, as unsexy as that might seem,
Preach.
is a mutually agreed upon expectation. So if I don't have a budget and I spend $200 on fill in the blank, and Kim's like, whoa, what are you doing? And now we're fighting about like what matters and what doesn't, and who spends more money and who doesn't. Well, you did this. Well, you did that. Well, we didn't need this. You didn't need that. If you actually have a budget and you can say, oh, no, we made space for this, and we agreed upon like clothing, entertainment, all the things. So
are you a Dave Ramsey fan with the envelopes?
We started that way. Yeah, we went through financial peace probably year 2 of our marriage, and it definitely put us on the same page. So we're not that militant about it.
Yeah.
We kind of, like many couples, we were all about it. And they're like, it's a lot of work. I
love you, Mike. This is awesome.
We're kind of there. We're 90% of the way there. So
exactly. Yeah. We don't do the envelopes anymore, but I think it's an incredible jumping off point. And I feel like with money, you need to be more conservative first, then you can be flexible for sure.
Yeah. 1,000%. Now we're breaking Dave Ramsey's heart because we got into travel hacking. This is not, which is about opening a crazy amount of credit cards and using bonus points to take awesome vacations. So we're
about 2 steps into that, man. We just took our kids on a big vacation the first part of the year, and we basically used all points from my travel and speaking and business credit card to pay it off, and we pay it off every month and all that stuff. And we were like, one of my friends, I won't say his name, he does this, and they go to all kinds of places, Italy and overseas, and he's been doing it for years. And I'm always like, I don't have the capacity to keep up with it. But as our kids are getting older and I want to take these big trips, I'm like, I'm already spending on all, especially for the business, all this money on just recurring bills. And it's like, why don't we just put it on there, pay it off? We have the money. And,
That's
so
it.
I'm with you. My staunch Dave Ramsey fans are freaking out. But, I think if you're using points and you're paying it off every month, you're not taking any risk there.
For sure.
So I'm with you, man. I love that.
Maybe there's one really big thing. It's not about Dave Ramsey, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
you said it earlier that nothing really exposes your own ego and selfishness like marriage. I have a lot of great friends, but my friends don't have to mutually agree upon a budget with me. And they have their own sexual experiences and lives and relationships. But I mean, think about this. You're trying to coordinate two lives into one for like half of a century. And it is going to push you and it's going to expose you. And there's going to be so many times when you just think, wow, I love this person more than anyone in the world. And I probably sinned against them more than my worst enemy. And so what I love about Christian marriage is that Christ shows up. And he doesn't just show up as example on how to be humble and selfless and sacrificial. He shows up as Savior. In fact, when the Apostle Paul is talking about the role of husbands, Paul gives like, I'd say 40% advice and just 60% good news of the gospel. So you'll love as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy and blameless, washing her to make her radiant, without wrinkle or stain or blemish. Like, what I love about being a Christian husband is not just that Christ tells me how to love, is that he loves me when I mess up. And that when the gospel and the forgiveness is there, that I have this relationship with God that isn't based on what letter grade are you giving me today, God? Am I good? Am I a good Christian husband? And I just love that. And I know I need that because I get to the end of every week and just wish that I could redo a few things. So I hope the wisdom that we've tried to share and the guidance in this podcast has been an encouragement, but I just want people to know his mercy is new every morning, and we can come to him with our failures and failed relationships and the weeks we wish we could take back. And there's grace and there's the cross that gets the last word.
That's beautiful, man. Yeah. In that, I think I would say to wrap up, there's two things. I forgot one of them already. The other, the scripture you quoted, I think, is that Galatians or Ephesians?
Ephesians 5.
Yeah. Ephesians. Yeah. It's the washing her in the water of the word was life-changing for me. A few years ago, I came into one of our biblical counseling offices, and 3 or 4 guys we meet every week, and I was crying and just like overwhelmed with frustration. Me and my wife got in a fight about something, and we're just arguing. I'm like, she just, she was struggling with her own self-esteem, and there was nothing I could do to, affirm her enough or encourage her enough, and I felt like a failure and didn't know what to do. And one of my buddies, Lyle, who's also a biblical counselor, he was like, well, your scripture says to wash her in the water of the word of God, not like Clint's opinion of her. I cried talking about it now, but I was like, man, well, that sucks. Like there's this piece of me that recognized, I want to tell her how awesome I think she is, and I want to affirm her, and my words need to matter and need to count, and I feel like a failure, but I wasn't necessarily praying and reminding her of who God sees that she is. And so I bought a book and, has those prayers and, started that. And that's something that just revolutionized my perspective in marriage of just like, how do I remind my wife of who God says she is and how he sees her, not me? And how do I get myself out of the way? And, I'd say that's probably what I struggle with the most is I want her to see that I love her a lot. And I need her to see that God loves her not a lot and the most. And so dying to yourself sometimes looks like that, is just loving your spouse and reminding them of who God says they are and washing them in the water of the word. And if you're not in the word and you don't believe the word and you don't quote the word, then you're just using words that have no supernatural power.
Can I share like some nerdy research I did with you?
Man. Yeah.
So if
I'm not in a rush. You're good, man. That's great.
If you're watching on the video right now, like right behind me, I have this stack of note cards. There's actually 683 note cards there. Because years ago, I read through the whole New Testament with 2 highlighters, and I wanted to see what labels God uses for Christians. And every time there was like a positive, like you're a child of God, or you're redeemed, or you're justified or forgiven, I'd give it 1 highlighter. And every time it's like, oh, you have little faith, or I'm a sinful man, or what a wretched man I am, another highlighter. I made it through the whole New Testament. This is a point to your story. I found 683 things that I highlighted. If you had to guess, based on your experience in the New Testament, how many were positive? You're forgiven, loved, the bride of Christ. How many were, but you're human, sinful, weak, frail? What do you think the breakdown was, like percentage-wise?
I mean, I would tend to lean, there's a lot more positive an extraordinarily amount of a lot more positive than there is negative. 80%, 90% more positive than negative. I don't know.
90 to 10.
Yeah.
So literally there were I think 17 books of the New Testament that did not use a negative label once.
Wow.
So there were like, I think it was 610 to 73 was my final data that, man, despite the fact that we are very human and frail in our faith is weak, to have the God who never lies once, just, you can call yourself a sinner or a bad spouse if you want, but if you're a Christian, you're a sinner who's redeemed, justified, holy, wrinkle-free, blameless, precious in his sight, his treasure, his holy people, his royal priesthood. So if you're going to call yourself a sinner, you have the right, but just make sure you repeat the rest of what God says in Christ.
Yeah, the 90%. That's so good, man. Yeah, on the theology kick, and we can keep going. I love talking to you. It's interesting to me. I have a couple clients, people who struggle with, why would God create this world? A friend of mine who's an atheist, and just how do bad things, how do we allow bad things to happen, and why did he create us this way, blah, 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 and, all the things that are hard and good questions. And in Revelations, Jesus says that I'm going to set you on my throne, which is the throne of God. And that you have inherited, because of what Christ has done, you have inherited everything that is Jesus's is yours. And I've been reading a lot about that recently, and just inheritance and in my life, and passing things down, and thinking about that, and that we're going to inherit a marriage. That Christ is our first husband, and he will be our last husband. And the way in which he's going to love us, and the intimacy and the connection and the vulnerability and all that attunement that we're looking for, like we're promised to get that inheritance in Christ with God, united in one with him in a way that we, cannot fathom. And all of the connection and all the intimacy that we're striving so hard for in this life is just such a pale comparison, to what we will receive. But we have to have the faith and the hope that is the case. And it reminds me of that C.S. Lewis quote, like, our problem isn't that we seek pleasure, it's that we're too easily pleasured. And it's like, whether it's sex, or whether it's money, or whether it's success or status or our kids, or whatever the thing is that's the idol that we're looking for, it is so fleeting and so failing, even when you get it. And Christ is not. And so for those listening, it's like, man, satisfy yourself on Christ, eat of the bread of life, drink of the water, as Jesus goes to the woman at the well and says, if you knew who I was, you'd be asking me for living water, right? And then you'd thirst no more. And so that's what I love about what you're talking about. I mean, seriously, like, love this conversation. I could have it for 4 more hours. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the words that you're pouring into people's lives, and the richness in which the book is. We'll put the link tree and all that stuff up, and I would love to have you back on and have another conversation in in the next quarter, because this was, I think you have so much that we're in the same vein about, and obviously can laugh about and have a good time, and that's real. So I'll, obviously we'll talk after we cut off, but I appreciate you so much, Pastor Mike.
Yeah, this was an awesome conversation. Thanks, Clint.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, thanks for listening. Grab his book. I'm going to put the link in the show notes, or Chip will. And just remember, like, we're all going through this. So if you're not married yet, you're single, or you've been married, you're married now and you're struggling, there is hope in all of this stuff. But we cannot put our hope in our marriages. We cannot put our hope in ourselves. We have to put our hope in the bride of the church, and the groom, who is Christ, coming and uniting and joining again, and that all of our hope is in that moment. And not to give up, keep fighting, keep reaching out to people like Pastor Mike, counselors. Do the work. You can find healing. And even though our hope is in that future thing, God is still a redeeming God, and he's a resurrecting God, and he can do all of that in your marriage and in your life. So be encouraged and have a good day. God bless.